Hello, hello, hello. As we fix the mic, welcome to Bathrobe Chat with Steve the Missionary, the live show from Steve the Missionary. Hope everyone's doing okay. Feel free to say hi in the chat, ask any questions you like, and we'll have some fun. And prayer requests in the chat too. Hello, Rebecca. Is also a good way to run the chat. So, who else is here? Sean and Gina. Hi, everybody. Today is going to be a fun day. We are going to talk about a couple things. One is the Women's World Cup because I can't help but talk about that, even though it bores Rebecca. And the other one is something that's been flaring up on the internet, or the Catholic internet, and that's what I'm going to open with right now. Is something, a tweet that a good friend of mine put out. Tommy Ty, who is at the GH is silent. I have his account open up right here. He's a good friend of mine. I had to move away from him this at the beginning of this year, which made me very, very sad. He is raising four amazing boys with his wife, Karen, who is awesome. And they really are just this down to earth, you know, get their work done Catholics who are doing their darndest to make their parish life and their family life as good as they can. And on Sunday, Tommy tweeted this. Today, at the end of Mass, our pastor publicly pointed out a friend of ours as they carried their crying baby out of Mass, and then announced ushers will now be coming up to people with fussy babies to ask them to step outside. The church I love is such a consistent disappointment, which I think is one, the proper response is just utter disappointment at that priest, that parish for going along with that decision, or anybody that priest ran that idea by for going on with that decision. I was really angry when I heard what was going on. My mom actually had a really, really good idea. Everybody at that parish should show up next week with crying baby noises on their phone, and just throughout the weekend or throughout the Mass, just play it. And when the ushers come in and try to find the crying baby, there's no crying baby. So that's one idea. Hi Joe. Yeah, it's utter garbage. Sean, the Benedictine Men's Silent Retreat I'm attending is next week, and it will be guided by Benedictine monks. Where is this? Where is Ard's Friary, Sean? That's what I want to know. And it's silent, so no babies crying. And I have a lot of thoughts about crying babies, which is hilarious because I don't have babies. I'm not raising kids right now, so the when I go through and I see what Tommy is going through and what the families there are going through, one is I've run into people, and I've had friends of my own go through just like the strange rudeness and disdain for children who are fussy, not even badly behaved, or utterly disruptive, just fussy, or not silent adults. And that that brings the ire of other parishioners onto that family, which is just so destructive. I think that's the number one word for it. It is destructive. It destroys faith, whether we like it or not. It destroys faith. It destroys a family's connection with the parish. It destroys trust. It destroys community, and it has the possibility of destroying the formation of those kids. I've seen people who I know the only reason that they were able to get through an instance like that without vowing to never come back is because they already had such intense faith that they weren't going to let this stop them. People who are coming with a more cracked foundation in their faith, or who have already been worn down through one event or another, and then find this and then find this instance either from a pastor, which we'll talk about in a minute, or or just another parishioner. That could be what makes them never go to church again. And to make the thing that makes them never go to church with them is this correction for something that isn't bad is untenable, unthinkable, inexcusable. And that's where it is when it's coming from fellow Catholic in the pew, which is why I always make sure to smile noticeably when there are kids making noise, so that parents know that we are not against you. We are on your team. Your child is adorable, and you all deserve to be in this mass just as much as I do, and I'm much quieter than you. So there's that. On top of that is the fact that this is the pastor of the parish, and I know kind of the background of some of what this parish is. This parish is trying to have a little bit of a liturgical revival and trying to add a little bit more traditional elements to their mass, trying to put in chants, trying to have a little bit more of reverent silence happening in the mass, which all of those things are incredible and good. And then they add on this, by the way, your children are a burden to the mass as it's experienced by everyone. And that's the part where from a pastor is extra destructive. A pastor's job is to help the souls of the people, and I think it's something that I've mentioned before. At the end of the day, the souls that are most important, the ones who need to be taken care of the most, are the families, the parents of children and the children. Um, that's where the future of the church is. That's where the domestic church is. And in a sense, all of us are part of a family. So that's nice that it's inclusive in that way. But when it comes to what's more important, the experience of, say, Tommy's family at that mass, or my experience, a single guy who knows how to be quiet at that mass, Tommy's family is more important when it comes to like whose experience is better. The liturgy is best for whom. Um, there are caveats for things like the disabled or the other marginalized groups, but our base, the place we start from is the family. And it's funny because the family will usually teach us very well how we need to react to disability, and disability language barriers and other marginalization elements, because the families are the ones that come in and say, my child has Down syndrome, how are you going to help us? We are the only Mexican family in this parish of a completely different ethnic makeup. How are we being welcome? Like they'll like their needs are kind of obvious sometimes, or more readily expressed in other ways. By welcoming the family, you will be welcoming most, if not all, of these other groups. And so when a pastor specifically says that a family of young children is who are already trying extra hard and putting in a lot of effort when they come to mass together, the pastor coming up to them and saying, you are being we are going to add this extra burden, we are going to call you out in an extra way, we are going to make it extra difficult for you to get to mass, that really betrays the pastoral goals of any parish. This is a really bad thing for a pastor to do, is to value an exterior silence over the worship of families and young children. So that's kind of the first rant. I'll probably continue. So let's go to some of the comments here. Sean Friel is going to a silent retreat in County Donegal in Ireland, God's country, as he's called it. I want to go to Ireland real bad one day. And I don't know anything about this friary, so this should be a lot of fun. And I'll be praying for you, Sean. That sounds awesome. Let us know when you're going. Joe, best proposal I've seen is for churches to set up rooms for people who need total silence so they can worship in silence cages of misery. Something to that effect. I've heard multiple people say this too, Joe. There's an idea where right now a lot of parishes, especially a lot of churches built after the 70s or 60s, there's the main room, the main sanctuary where the mass happens and everybody prays, and then there's the cry room off to the side or way in the back with a window between them and the rest of mass where crying children can go and hang out. If we switched that, where as Joe is saying, we put all the crying babies in the main room of the church, and all the people who are in desperate need of total silence can go into the silent room, the cage of misery, as Joe wants to call it, or just the silent room. I think that'll make everybody happy. Families will be welcome, and silent people can get their silence. Rebecca, her province views super old. So yeah, the problem is old people chatting during mass. That's true. I get that a lot. Especially before mass, my parish has a problem of just too much chatting in the pews before mass starts. It's really difficult to pray. And it's not in terms of fussy children or antsy people. It's just people who are chatting about their week with the person next to them. And that's not the point of the inside of the church. The inside of the church is for prayer, and young children, when they pray, are a little bit louder because they're young. And old people can learn to be quiet in church. That's why we have, the outside of the church, the very front steps. That's why you have donuts after mass, is for this communal and community element. That's what I think. Let's see. Oh gosh, Joe's baby got born. I forgot. Oh my gosh, and he's 5 weeks old now. She's 5 weeks old now. Um, and we've only had people come up who want to see the baby, be very supportive. The baby's pretty quiet though. Good for you, Joe. I'm so excited that you're bringing your little baby to church, and I need to drive up there to visit, because that's amazing. Um, and baby will probably get more fussy as they grow older, especially when they're walking. That was the one time I thought maybe we need to correct somebody, was when a parent. The one time I got frustrated and impatient with a parent at mass was when there was a mom who was letting her toddler kind of run up and down the side aisle. Um, Parents do that a lot, just kind of like let the kid walk around and not bother anybody, and off to the side. And so the kid's going up and down the side aisle, but also yelling. And so there was like, playground squealing from this kid, wee, running back and forth. And that was when I was like, okay, that's called a kid who's not using their inside voice, and a parent who doesn't want to stop them. And that's, there's a difference. Like, there is such a thing as a kid not using their inside voice and a parent who won't stop them. And then there's uh, parents who bring their kid to mass and doing their darndest. Rebecca, my friend always takes her kids out, even though the priest tells her he doesn't even notice her daughter, which I'm sure isn't true because the baby can be loud. But she's paranoid. I'm really sorry. That's really unfortunate. Sean reminding me that it's a Franciscan friary. The phone ringing for absolutely no reason, and from Gina, do you know how difficult it is to go to mass with small children? It takes an extra hour just to get the kids dressed and out the door. It takes a huge amount of effort and planning to get there, and always are so hopeful for a loving and healing experience. Otherwise, why work so hard to get there? This is, I think, a general idea for all people in 2019 is, and so like the effort you put into going to mass. So like for me, the effort that gets put into going to mass is kind of minimal, right? There's a mass as late as 12:45 in the afternoon and as late as 6 p.m. at night in my neighborhood. And so I can literally wake up at any time I want and put on clothes and go to mass. And so I expect the mass to have as much effort put into it as I put into it, which is pretty low. So now look at it from a young parent's perspective. That takes a lot, especially a young parent of multiple kids. That takes a lot of effort and planning and discipline and concern and teaching and observance and and then to go and to do put all that effort into an experience of a mass that is not welcoming, that doesn't value your kids, that doesn't value your family, that chooses to point, like, to single you out as someone who needs to leave the building, which is what this pastor is talking about. You will be singled out and asked to leave the building during mass. That is, you will absolutely see people leave, because that's the opposite of what a parish should do. From the very basis of like what you put into something and what you get from it, which is a lot of how people make decisions outside of like grander things like duty or religious obligation or prayer, or the principles of prayer. A more basic level is what you get out of it versus what you put in. And parents of young children put a lot of effort into going to mass. And are we responding to them with a similar level of effort? Ashley, coming back, apologies to Ashley, because I'm going to talk about the Women's World Cup, and I know that's not your style. I love chatty babies. It's the teens who play on their phone that bother me. And the little ones actually keep me focused on the present. That's true of it's probably true especially of Gina, or of parents, but that's true of all people. Like babies and really young children force you to focus on the exact now, and which is awesome. Hi Amy, thanks for coming on. um um okay, someone trolling my account. Thanks a lot. um there's also, yeah, Ashley talking about being a caretaker of people who are older can be just as difficult as people who are younger. I was yelled at by an old lady, says Amy, when I was 4, because I asked why, because I asked why she was crying. She was praying. If autism and ADHD didn't understand how I didn't go to mass when I didn't agree with the church. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of everybody's coming in with a lot of their own personal mass experiences, which is good. I love sharing mass experiences, confession experiences, in general, because it's such a human part of Catholicism, and makes me really kind of makes me really happy. One thing I do want to say about this, Father, what's his name? Responded, Father Ryan Hildebrand, who is also on Twitter, responded in a very cool way to what Tommy was saying. He's speaking specifically to priests. Another thought: when it comes to crying kids in church, you have two viable options long term. Number one, learn to love it. Number two, go insane. Inviting people to remove their children is just the long form option of number two. Just learn to love it. I did. So there's this idea that um, crying children is a sign of growth in your church. It's a sign of young families in your church. It's a sign of welcoming to the church. And you either have to learn to love it as a parishioner just as much as a priest, maybe a little less because I want to give homilies, or you will go insane. Um, because trying to shove all the crying babies out of mass is how you shut down the church. It's how you close a church. It's So if you want the parish to shut down, especially this parish that Tommy's talking about, which is connected to an elementary school, so that it's already full of parents of younger children who want to form a community, who are trying to connect their community and their faith, and to have this sort of like laid on them is just so unhelpful. It's a backward pastoral move, is what I'm gonna say. And there's also comments on here talking about how this is not a pro-life element, and it's not even a pro-baptism action either. Pro-life, women should have the babies out of their unplanned pregnancies, but we will not let them in our parish once that baby gets noisy. That's dangerous and anti-life. And we will not let parents baptize their children unless they promise to keep bringing their kids to mass, but we will actively make sure that they feel unwelcome at mass, and kick them out of the building if they're too noisy. Kick them out of the building if they're too noisy during mass, because a child is crying or being fussy. That's 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 against the church, as far as I can tell. So next time you hear a crying baby at mass, just have a, give an inviting smile to the parents, and then try to cheer up the baby with funny faces, because that's what I do. If baby one pew in front of me is crying, funny faces always work. And it's nice because everybody's happy. And don't complain to your priest, because then your priest will be feel more and more pressured to make an announcement like Tommy's pastor did, and that will only hurt our church. All right. Now to soccer, because a lot is happening in soccer right now. The And I hope you can all join me through this journey. The women's soccer World Cup is still going on. United States women just beat Spain 2-1, but both of those goals were off of penalty kicks, and both of those penalty kicks were kind of weak calls. So they were probably technically good calls, and actually they were technically good calls. They followed the rules, but the fouls that caused them were just soft fouls, and not really do a game changing or tournament ending call for the Spanish team, which is unfortunate. It also doesn't inspire a ton of confidence in me for the American women. So the Spain was the first team we've played so far that gave any sort of challenge, and Joe's agreeing with me, so that makes me happy. Spain is the first team that gave us any sort of challenge, and we did not rise to the occasion. We got lucky with these two really soft penalty kick calls. The goal that Spain scored was because of a series of massive mistakes on the team's part. We did not put up a good showing, and on Friday we're gonna play the home team, who has always been noted is going to be was going to be our biggest challenge. This will be one of the few crowds where the United States fans won't be outnumbering everybody else's fans. It might not feel like a home team advantage for the United States for the first time in the tournament. Ashley's chiming in. My confidence hasn't been shaken. It hasn't been completely shaken yet, and that's where I'm feeling. Um, that's kind of where we're at. My advice is not um uh my sorry my confidence is not shaken. I hope that they take this to like as a rallying cry, like we will do better. That was the bottom point. That was us suffering through a hard win, and we will fly to the finals from here on out. I just don't know. I don't know if we're ready to. So that's going to be fun. That's Women's World Cup for you. With the men, there's a Gold Cup going on, and the United States is finally like winning. We just beat the Trinidad and Tobago team. So this is a message from my grandpa. We just beat Trinidad and Tobago 5-0 or 6-0, which was beautiful. It was a lot of fun to beat Trinidad and Tobago. They are the ones that blocked us from going to the World Cup. It was a lot of fun to beat them in a shutout with so many points, and so many points by so many different players. It was fun to see Zardes try for his hat trick and not quite making it. Just a ton of fun. It was extra fun, even though it is Trinidad and Tobago. They are not top tier in CONCACAF, in our conference, or the South American Conference at all. So they are an easier team, even if they've beat us before. So that's not a feather in your cap to beat Trinidad and Tobago. But in watching the game, I finally saw chemistry in our offense. I finally saw the team start to click. And you have to play easier teams to kind of like stew the chemistry. And it happened. And Zardes, the other the teammates finally learned how to give the ball to Zardes and how open Zardes has to be in order to make something out of it. And when he makes something out of it, they're goals. He doesn't just make a play out of it. He puts a number on the board when he's open. Zardes is lucky that we have that we have that coach Rosardes was lucky that we have our coach. I can't say his name, Bearhalter. And so we're gonna, keep going in that tournament, and we're gonna play harder teams, and will probably lose to one of them. But we are leaving this tournament with a much better team, with a team that actually has chemistry, with strikers that know what they're doing, with exciting play, and with a really strong left side. Pulisic is on the left, and so suddenly players who, teams that have to defend against the United States have to defend against a strong, like world class strong left side, which is just fun. I like this. Um, yeah, Joe, you're right. Zardes looked lost on the national team until this stretch. No one was sure what to do with him. And I think that was actually true about a lot of this new round of players. We haven't been sure what to do with them yet, how they fit together, what is the best scenario for them to kind of flourish. And this team, I'm sorry, Ingrid, I'm going to stop talking about this as soon as I can. And this team is finally figuring out. The players are finally figuring out how to help each other flourish, and the coach has finally figured out how to make these players flourish. And if you all want to watch the next U.S. soccer games, and so that you know what I'm talking about, you are welcome to. I have totally forgotten when they are. The women play next on Friday, and the men play next probably Thursday. The end. This week we are doing some awesome content on this channel. I'm putting up my first video about ordinary time. For all Roman Catholics, it is ordinary time. Ordinary time doesn't mean boring or uneventful. Ordinary time means like ordered time or scheduled time. It's kind of back to our regularly scheduled program. All of the work, all of the the effort that Christ calls us to do in our Christian life needs to happen now. Ordinary time is the time for that, the building of the kingdom. We just came off of Lent and Easter. So Lent was a time of extra fasting, extra penance, using that model of spirituality to get closer to God, to realign our souls with who God is, and who we are, and how much in need of God we are, how much need of forgiveness we are. Easter is a time of celebrating the glories of God, and ordinary time is about putting into action the work of the gospel. So this is an exciting time. Ordinary time is exciting to me. It's kind of a newer concept. This is something that I'm not talking about this week. It's kind of a newer concept. Having huge swaths of the calendar be ordinary time is not something we had before Vatican II. The old calendar has a lot of different, post Easter season, and then a post Pentecost season, and then a small Advent or a small Lent, and so much got the liturgical season was a lot more complicated, and that meant that ordinary time, or an ordinary week, was really shrunk down to a couple weeks. For Catholics today, it's most of the year. On the one hand, that's sad because we lost holidays, just straight up. There are holidays and octaves that we do not celebrate anymore, which is unfortunate. And it's part of the reason why Catholic Twitter is so cool, because you get to float around and somebody who's like a nerd about these things, like, hey, it's the last day of the octave of the Nativity of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and that means that this specific song used to be sung in church, and these specific prayers, which is awesome. That's part of our tradition. It's part of how we pray. It's part of how my ancestors prayed. And I'm sad that we don't have that as much in my day-to-day going to mass Catholicism. But the kind of the exchange we got was a huge swath of the year dedicated to the action of the gospel, doing the work that Christ has given us. Yeah, Rebecca reminded me, Ember Days and Tenebrae, and all these things that you hear from Catholic social media. I'm actually glad we don't have Ember Days. Like, extra fasting on random Wednesdays would be so annoying and so confusing. I'm very happy we don't have them. That said, we should probably fast better on like Lent. So that's where I stand with some of that. So I think the best way to do it is to, especially when social media can be such a small part of your life, if done right, put a nice post on the octave of the Nativity of the Blessed Virgin Mary with a nice little picture of Mary. Say an extra Hail Mary on those days, and note to your friends, that this is a special day, but do the work of ordinary time. I think that's the best way to approach it. Um, last So this is a last call for questions on the chat, comments on the chat that I'll repeat. I thank you everybody who's in this chat today. Thank you to everybody who has gone over to patreon.com/SteveTM. That's my Patreon. And all of you who are patrons, thank you so much. You are what helps keep this channel alive. And I don't know how this is going to influence the rest of the channel, but I wanted to kind of like put it out there. I'm doing a lot more reading and about like environmentalism, like permaculture, and how technology plays a role in that. And what I need to read is I need to reread Laudato Si, the Pope's encyclical on the environment, and I need to read this document that the California bishops just published, kind of a local implementation or a local teaching inspired by Laudato Si, and kind of use that as a groundwork. I would love to see where that goes. And so I'll be spouting a lot of random opinions that I do not hold very strongly because I've only just heard of the idea, and seeing what you guys think. Joe says distributism, but that's only because he has read too much G.K. Chesterton. So I'm going to let it slide. So with that, thank you all for coming out today. Thank you. Please share this. And please share all Steve the Missionary videos, like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell. That's the best way to trick the algorithm into seeing every Steve the Missionary video you can. I'm sorry that document wasn't out while you were starting the wetlands, Ashley, but they're out now. So, read what you can. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. The vlog is ended. Go in peace.